Hello, I'm Billy Boshoff. I've just been elected as the president of the Concrete Society of Southern Africa, and it's a great honor for me to stand here. This is my presidential address. That's normally part of the AGM, but we had a AGM via Zoom, and I thought it would be a good idea to still do the presidential address, but do it on a video form, and then it can be distributed to members or whoever is interested. Now is a difficult time for the Concrete Society, but it's actually a difficult time for the world. Of course, we all know about COVID 2019. That is making havoc at the moment. The construction industry is anyway doing badly, and we've also got consolidation of industry bodies in the concrete industry. But the last one is I'm actually excited about the consolidation, because that gives us new opportunities. We are going to have new opportunities for Concrete Society members. We might not have the name of Concrete Society soon anymore. We might not have the identity as we used to know it, but what I'm sure that we'll have more value for members of the Concrete Society. So I'm sure that the work of the Concrete Society will continue. We will continue with what we do in a different form, but we will continue, and we will continue to serve our members. And what I can promise you from the Concrete Society, from the board side, we are proactive with this consolidation. We are going to do this. We're going to try and lead the way of how it should happen, rather than just wait and see what is going to happen. Because if you just wait and see, you might miss the boat. So we are going to be proactive, and I believe it's going to be a very positive thing. Now, my presentation I'm giving now, I called it Concrete is Sacred. Now, concrete is not always seen as a sacred material. Concrete is often given a bad name in the world, and specifically cement is given a bad name. I know there was one article recently posted on Concrete Trends titled Concrete, the most destructive material on earth, which I completely disagree with. It's an opinion piece that wasn't founded scientifically, but let's talk about it. How bad is concrete? How bad is cement really? There's many indicators you can look at. Carbon emissions is just one of many, but because of the process of making cement is releases such a lot of carbon dioxide that is probably the most appropriate indicator to look at for cement. Now, let's look at the cement plant. You will see just a picture of a cement plant I grabbed from the internet. You don't see a lot of pictures. People don't post pictures of the cement plants. But what you will see is the typical preheater in the beginning, the kiln, the post-processing, etc. happening. That's typically what looks like what is a cement plant. Now, if you just look at the cement plant like this is quite a busy graph, but let me take it step for step. What we've got here is the preheater, where you add limestone and shale, and it gets preheated up to 900 degrees Celsius, then goes down the kiln, and at the end of the kiln you add fuel. That's normally in the form of ground coal, to give the heat, and that heat goes up to 1500 degrees Celsius. So this heat you need to add to make the cement contributes about 340 grams CO2 per kilogram of cement. So there's a lot of carbon emissions just by the fuel that you let in. But a very important point is that during this preheating phase, you've got calcination. Calcination is a chemical reaction where the calcium carbonate is broken up into calcium oxide and CO2, and that CO2 is released. It's about 530 grams CO2 per cement manufactured. So you can see that in the chemical reaction, you have a lot more CO2 released than actually the fuel, the burning, to burn the kiln. So it is a lot of CO2. If you add that together, this is on average for a typical cement plant. It differs, modern technology can be less, but 870 grams CO2 per kilogram of cement. So for every kilogram of cement you make, almost a kilogram of CO2 is released into the earth. So coming back to the CO2, the cement industry is responsible for about 5 to 6% of worldwide carbon emissions, which is quite a lot if you think about it. But let's put in perspective. The medical industry, which includes pharmaceuticals, of course, in the whole chain, contribute to 4.5% of the world's CO2 emissions. That's just less than cement. The agricultural industry is about 9%. And the one that we always say is a big culprit, people flying around, it's very bad for the environment. The airlines are only about 2.5% of the world's CO2 emissions. So, but in South Africa, we never complain about the impact of the medical industry. We never complain about the agricultural industry. But we're very quick to complain about the cement industry and the airlines industry. Now, let's focus on the cement industry. Why is that? Now, the reason is the agricultural industry and the medical industry, for good reasons, they are seen as sacred. Do not touch. When you go to a doctor, you don't ask for discount. The farmers, the same thing. We really respect farmers, and we should. We should respect the farmers, we should respect the farming industry, we should respect the medical industry, especially at this point of time where the medical industry is doing an excellent job, or doing the best they can with limited resources to trying to fight this crisis we've got at the moment. But the difference between them and cement and concrete is that they are seen as a sacred industry. Now, I agree with that. It should be seen as a sacred industry, but where does it leave cement and concrete? Now, cement is essential to living. There will be no hospitals, there will be no roads, there will be no bridges, there will be no houses, there will be no harbours, there will not be shops, sewage plants, etc. if it wasn't for cement. Cement is the backbone of the built environment, of everything we have. If you just look around you in the room wherever you are now, you'll see cement in some or other way in that building. Now, we should regard cement and concrete as sacred as well, because that's a sacred part of the built environment, a sacred part of our communities, a sacred part of our living. We simply cannot do without. But that does not mean we have to say we have to do nothing about the environmental impact. Of course, the environmental impact is a concern of any industry, medical, agriculture will also have to think about how can they reduce the environmental impact. We should do, and we should do more. Now, we can firstly reduce the impact of the cement industry by using less cement. That's obvious. I mean, the more cement we manufacture, the more CO2 is released. So if we can build the same things for using less cement, but using other extenders or something like that, we can really improve. But let's have a look at these tables. We can reduce the environmental impact with basically 4 things that's in our power at the moment. The first is using supplementary cementitious materials. I already mentioned that. Using extenders is another word for it. That is replacing part of cement with fly ash or slag or ground limestone. There are a lot of options like that, and that will reduce the amount of cement, but that is something we've already been doing. But we can do it more. Reducing binder content is something that we don't do a lot, and that is using superplasticizers to really reduce the binder content, to reduce the amount of cement in concrete and end up with the same strength and quality concrete. It is possible. Then I like to talk about the slow concrete revolution that comes with the first point, using supplementary cementitious materials. If we use supplementary cementitious materials, your concrete will gain strength slower. It will probably eventually gain the same strength, but it'll gain the strength slower. And therefore, it's going to take longer before you can strip your formwork on site. The construction projects will take longer. Now, that's something we don't want to hear. The owners, the project managers say, how quick, how fast can we do this? But if we really want to do something for the environment, we've got to start thinking of doing stuff slower. Like a slow food revolution that was, I think, in the 80s was started. A slow concrete revolution. If we can say we should make it acceptable for concrete to gain strength slower to save the environment, we should start doing that. The last one is carbon offsetting, which is not such a difficult thing to do. It's very contentious. I've read up about it now, and a lot of people say yes, it's worthwhile. Some say it's a waste of money. It's trying to steal money. But what I could gather is that if you want to offset 1 ton of CO2, it'll cost you about $10, which is actually not a lot. Therefore, 1 bag of cement, if you add 5 to 10 rand to 1 bag of cement, you can offset the carbon dioxide emissions of that whole bag of cement with just that extra amount, which is, yes, increasing the price of cement is an issue, but this can neutralize the effect of the environment of the cement. But of course, you've got to make sure that the way the carbon offsetting is done is correct, responsible, and it's actually not just a money-making scheme and actually reducing the carbon dioxide in the process. We have to accept concrete is here to stay. Cement is here to stay. There is no alternative available. A lot of people are looking at doing research, a lot of possible alternatives, alternative binders, etc. And yes, there are some savings, there is some options, but there's not something in the industry or in the research at the moment that will revolutionize the way we use cement or concrete. For at least the next 20 to 30 years, I would say concrete and cement is with us. And so is the environmental impact. But there are ways of reducing the impact, and we've got to work on reducing the impacts and improving that. But concrete is here to stay, and I believe that we should now honor concrete with giving it the name of being sacred. Concrete is sacred. Concrete is important. Concrete is extremely important. We should make it sacred and learn to live with the consequences of the environmental impact and reducing them as much as possible. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate that. If you've got any questions, you're welcome to contact me. If you just Google my name, you'll probably find my email address. Email me if you want to start a discussion about what I said. If you disagree or agree, I'd love to speak to you about it, and then we can get some discussion going. So thank you very much, and thank you once again for electing me as the President of the Concrete Society of Southern Africa. Enjoy the rest of your day.